Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Brilliant Stars, make sure you go ahead and check out the Poketown store. You can get a 5% discount on your order using that code Omnipoke. For today's video, I'm going to be going over my top tier tweaks for the best decks in the format. We have 2 regionals and a special event going on this weekend in 3 different regions around the globe. We're expecting that Indy is going to be the largest regional we've ever seen. So a lot of people are looking to prepare and knee-jerk react to the EUIC format, where Urshifu Moltres came out on top by a pretty large margin. So I guess I'm going to start with my Urshifu Moltres. Now, I would expect going into this tournament to get your testing in against Gustavo's build. I think Gustavo's build is the easiest for people to pick up, which means after seeing it at the UIC, they have enough playtime to test it. But B, it was the winning deck, right? And we had the most time to sort of evaluate Gustavo's play and look at the games on stream and stuff to know how to pilot the deck fairly well into some of the more popular matchups. So I would expect Gustavo's list to probably be like 60% of the Urshifu that you would hit, and a number of them will be adding in other cards such as the Medicham Inteleon package. And I personally really like playing Inteleon and Medicham now. I think it was clever of Gustavo to not play it at EUIC because there weren't enough people playing Manaphy, as we saw, because Urshifu rose to the top very easily. But now I'm expecting every Arceus player under the sun is going, right, Dunsparce, Manaphy, like either Clara or Carrier, those instantly go into their deck list, right, to protect themselves against Urshifu as best as possible, and also recover against an Avery play. So now we need to attack them in a different direction, and that's by having Quick Shooting and Yoga Loop at your disposal. So I do think you have to make the concession to play Medicham. It's stronger at beating tech lists. That was kind of the initial reason why it was in Robin 60 in Liverpool. That's why we still saw Yoga Loop in a lot of the American lists and even Pedro and Tord. So Quick Shooting Yoga Loop opens up the door for many other avenues. So I do think it's worthwhile to play once again. So yeah, it beats the techs, which is pretty good. So yeah, it just means that your strategy sort of is extended on to the late game. Of course, you can sort of two-shot Arceus players as well, force them into using Sharon's Care, because you're also a Cheryl user yourself. So you can quite happily try and do that dance while you build up towards your Inteleon line. So you can get Quick Shooting going onto their Dunsparce, onto their Manaphy, scare them, you know, put them into weird positions. So yeah, I think the Medicham is very good for that reason. But this is kind of like a hybrid of mostly the European list and the Gustavo 60, personally, because we're not playing the Celebrations Mew. I'm playing Snorlax. I do feel like it's very valid. I saw a lot of value of it throughout the stream. But just going down, I really like the Piers inclusion from Gustavo. I am playing the Crobat and I'm playing the Moltres V, so it gets maximum value here outside of Hooper. That's the only thing that I'm not playing right now. But Piers does get a good amount of value. I am playing that Water Energy as well. I feel like it's an annoying card for Whimsicott specifically, because that 160 threshold is very frustrating when they use DTE to reduce their own damage. So we're playing the 7 basic energy split this way. We're doing the Avery option in here. I also have Birdkeeper and Nets and whatnot. So try to steal space where I can, but we're still embracing the million one-off approach with Peonia. So it's a bit more complex than Gustavo's, but that's really because you've had to, well, I believe you should be shoehorning the Medicham engine back in, and of course you need to play Manaphy for Mirror now. So yeah, Urshifu is weird because you lose consistency spaces by having to put in your own Manaphy, and I believe because other people are teching for you, you need to tech for the techs, which is basically Quick Shooting Medicham, so you can Yoga Loop through some of these guys. And sometimes the Dunsparce is actually a downside for the Arceus player, because you can do Quick Shooting net plays and Yoga Loop them, and then yeah, you're going to tear through their board basically. There's definitely an argument to go up to 4th net, especially if you are trying to do these net loop plays, so something to keep an eye on there. But in general, I feel like it's just a strong option to have. Even if you sort of slow roll it against the opponent, I think it's valid. Force like their big charms onto their Dunsparces and stuff. You make some really weird plays happen. But yeah, this is a huge headache of a deck. If you want to challenge yourself in the last few days in the run-up to the tournament and you've been playing Gustavo's list, think about the Medicham package and how it can benefit you in a teched field for Urshi. I still feel like the deck is going to do pretty well. It still sticks to its core principles. It's a little bit more annoying of how many awkward leads you have now with 5V Pokemon. So that's a minor concern. But I think it's one of those things you kind of have to accept now going into the tournament. The other alternative is that you play the Medicham, cut the Crobat, cut the Piers, go to like second Sonya, and buy a space, but then you lose out on Crobat, which is actually really important in like Mew matchups, I think, where you don't put down any of your fighting type 2 prizes, you just put down like your dark 2 prizes and then just have the late game molt play. So yeah, I think those are all I really need to say on Urshifu. I do feel like this is still potentially the best deck in the format. I believe it's got a safe enough Mew matchup, trying to just focus in on those dark Pokemon as best you can. And its Arceus matchup is getting admittedly closer because people are, of course, trying to tech in Hooper V. So do bear that guy in mind and not just coming in guns blazing with Rapid Flow. But if they're putting down like Dunsparce, Manaphy, Hooper V, their board is like really wacky anyway. And you can put them in weird Avery spaces where they run out of their like engine Pokemon or still have to make painful sacrifices here or there. So yeah, I think you've got your bases pretty well covered. So I still think this is a solid list. One to play around with a little bit more as well. If you want to increase your ratios, you could start adding in Mews into here as well. Like one Snorlax, one Mew makes sense to me as well. Just for an extra one prize Pokemon that you can throw into the active and get value out of. If I was doing that, I would at least add a Rope, possibly also a Net. But that's where I'm at with Urshifu Moltres. And I do believe it's probably the second best deck in the game. Mew is probably still the best deck in the game. But we're making some changes. Things are actually happening. I'm at double Court plus 1 Psychic to help deal with Whimsicott. And I'm also, notably, playing Ice-Q. This little boy right here. The idea is against Urshifu players, and in general, like Inteleon engines that play a Dark package, this kind of includes Arceus to an extent. You just want to be using one prizes more often, and this acts as a additional one prizer alongside Meloetta, and most importantly, you can just start taking out Sobbles around their board, which I think is really cool, or it forces an awkward Manaphy into play. You can still boss and block slide it to knock out things like Sobbles and Drizzles and whatnot. So yeah, I like having a fourth one prize Pokemon in the deck. It helps a late game leap strategy, as does the basic Psychic, by the way. And yeah, it can just be aggressive into dealing with early Sobbles and ruin their engine, which is really nice. I'm also playing a Marnie. Now, I'm currently not playing Pad, but you could easily drop to 1 Rope if you really want to make space for the Palpad as well. Palpad's actually kind of interesting because it lets you continue with like a Meloetta boss game plan, dealing with Sobbles very proactively as well. And just gives you some coverage around, like, you know, discarding some of these supporters. Like, if you want to discard Marnie early because it's just a brick in, like, your opening 2 turns or whatever, super acceptable, made even better by a Palpad. So that's the other thing that I'm sort of debating right now, if I want a pad in here to supplement the Marnie. But just having one copy, because you cycle so far into your deck, especially against, like, the Urshifu players, you can time this relatively easily, especially if you have this Ice-Q or Meloetta loaded up. You don't need to draw that many cards, to be honest with you. You'll sit on a hand somewhat, so yeah, it seems pretty reasonable. And this acts as a 5th decent card to hit off of Judges and Marnies from the opponents if they're going to combine it with Path. So Arceus deck still playing Path, Whimsicott playing 3 Path, don't forget about that. So having the 4 Counter Stadium and the Marnie now should give you a good amount of protection while still having a fairly high item count. I could easily foresee you cutting the Ice Cube just to play 3rd Meloetta. That's also very reasonable. If I was doing that flip-flop, I would definitely add in the Palpad, because you'd be bossing Sobbles more often. But yeah, I think Ice Cube's kind of cute and is interesting. Of course, it can easily deal with a Hooper hit, and actually doesn't even set up Yoga Loop straight away, which I think is really cool, because if you have Ice Cube or a Corio down, you're not setting up a Yoga Loop play, which is what a Meloetta would do, and you also beat random like Cleansing Glove techs. So yeah, the Ice Cube actually pretty intelligent, I think, going into this tournament, and that's how I'd be playing Mew, which is pretty bold. And I used to really hate the 2-2 stadium split, by the way, but I think Whimsicott is probably important enough to try and disrupt. The only other thing I'll say about having the second court is it helps the dark players, right? It helps them accumulate the Moltres, so you could still go for Symmetry here. You could just get away with 1 court, 1 psychic if you feel like it's good enough. So yeah, just something to bear in mind there. The reason why I'm at double core as well, it helps you do the Psychic Leap plays that slight bit better. So it's a small trade-off there overall. Then let's look at an Arceus Inteleon. There's going to be 3 different engines of Arceus that I look at today, very different approaches all round. This is going to be the Dark Arc list, which is incorporating the Manaphy Dunce, and it's also incorporating Hoopa V, which I think is the knee-jerk reaction for most Arceus players, basically trying to have one-hit KO potential into Urshifu to put players off just slamming the 3-prizer down and starting to have their way with you, basically. So weaving that in is going to be important. We've gone the wonderful one-of route with Arceus now, so we've essentially copy-pasted the engine that we've seen of Urshifu and plonked a Starbirth in there, which I think is kind of interesting. So we are playing some one-offs, like the Energy Switch alongside Raihan gives you some prizing coverage, and it's also, again, helpful against Whimsicott, who are going to try and hammer and fan you, which is always very nice. We are only playing one path, which is a little bit risky. You could go up to a second copy of path pretty easily, but we are trying to cram a lot of things in here, obviously. We have got that Clara recovery, which is naturally good with your Molt. You've got Training Court in here as well, which is good for late game Malevolent charges. I am playing Melanie and 2 Water, I believe. Yeah, 2 Water, 6 Basic Dark. So we have Melanie, Raihan, and Energy Switch. Plenty of ways to burst excel the Arceus into play, which I think is important. And again, Water Energy attacking with Inteleon, very, very annoying for Whimsy players. So do bear that in mind if you want to use the Aqua Bullet effectively. I still think the Intel engine has a lot of legs to it. Obviously, you start getting very greedy with your supporter package at this point. I like the peers include that we saw in the Urshi list, so I've incorporated it into this one as well, because you can actually try and do a very similar thing that Gustavo does with his Urshifu deck, right? You can just try and be a one-prize deck that puts down a Moltres for a right-hand play, and then just goes for the Malevolent Charge plays. The only difference is that sometimes, you know, you can put down one Arceus throughout the game. That's really it, compared to like a Crobat that Gustavo would be putting into play. So just something to bear in mind there. And if you go first as Arceus, and they only take like a one-prize KO with their Meloetta or whatnot, you can actually liberally put down both of these 2 prizes, because you can go like a 2-3-1 route very happily by putting both of these into play, or just having this as a late game Clara threat. So yeah, the prize race shouldn't be like too crazy. That's why we only have one path in here, because actually against Mew, as good as like Nova path is as a play, sometimes you want the bounce back ability of it. If they have been able to KO your Arceus V-Star, you can just go straight into Moltres and punish them. So that's kind of the idea here. So yeah, trying to incorporate the Urshifu Moltres engine into an Arceus approach. We've sort of like reverse engineered how we want to build this deck, which I think is pretty interesting. But it's something that you kind of have to do. You have to cut all those corners that you used to have in the deck, and obviously it's a much thinner Arceus here than typical Arc Intels. But essentially, Arc doesn't beat enough of the format on his own anymore. Typically, you know, Arceus got to this inflection point where it got so popular that people just started countering it and made like his high hit points that used to be like its main glamour, its main selling point, just not good enough anymore. So yeah, we do still have the Marnie cheese factor, but it's not the lean in that we go for as much anymore. Now we're having Urshi weakness and we're hitting Mew weakness. So I'd expect a number of people playing this, and you also have the Mirror Respect in here as well with the Sherons, the Palpad. That sort of stuff, and you have late game beat stick potential with Malevolent Charge if need be. So yeah, the only thing we're sort of lacking is a fighting type Mon, but we're playing our own Dunsparce and recovery for it, so that's what we're going for in this list. So yeah, very interesting that I'm trying to hybrid that same wonderful one-of headache of a deck in this approach as well. Let's quickly get Mali out of the way, because my Mali actually is like very unchanged. I did just want to talk about this. I'm still not playing Manaphy. I actually still think that it's wrong, because I don't think that Urshi Molt will be popular enough for it to be a big problem. And if it is popular enough, like I said, I'd expect most of it to be Gustavo list, which isn't playing quick shooting Medicham. I think those are the only ones. So like it's a percentage of a percentage that you're actually bad against. And I think just straight Urshifu that plays like the double Avery, yes, it's annoying, but if you double evolve your Mallies, even if they're doing rope plays, you send them another Mally, you have your 30 resistance on your Mally, and they can't like take both out in the same turn. So you can really do some plays here where you typically need like Inkay double Mally developed. But the good news is they're weak to Psychic, right? So you really don't need a good hand to sit on to response KO them. So I feel like you should be fine, and I still like high rapid ratios. No surprise there. So yeah, I'm sticking to my guns with Mali and not adding in any of this non-rapid nonsense. I think it's just bad for the deck, and I would still expect Mew to be the most popular deck going into a big event. And the great news about this deck is you get to just play 4-ofs and chill, basically, and do your own strategy, and just become a headache for the opponents. I'd expect a lot of Arc Intels to be cutting their Intel engine substantially to fit in these dark techs and whatnot, so I think your Arc matchup improves as well. So I think you're pretty reasonable into Mew. Yes, they could probably be playing Marnie now, which is a bit worrying. You get better against Arceus, and although Urshifu is awkward for you, you much prefer seeing Gustavo's list than the European list or Robin's list or whatever. So I think it's in a better meta placement than it was for EUIC. I don't think it's crazy, and I am still a little bit worried, especially if people pick up like Isaiah and John's list, or if they pick up Tord's list. They need a brain the size of those players, of course, to go alongside it. But I think in general that's going to be only a handful of players, and I think you could easily have made it to day 2 before you've hit someone that competent with Urshifu. So yeah, I still feel like Mali's a good day 2 play if that's all you're looking for. Certainly a good points play, I think. Next up we have, let's go for the Mustard Beedrill thing. So this is, again, another huge craziness. Like I said, there's some big knee-jerks going on in the format. If you want to keep up, you really have to respect the wave of Urshifu that could be coming, while still having enough for other matchups. So this is a Mustard Beedrill approach. The majority of the time we saw this paired alongside Urshifu at the EUIC. But I've been talking to one of my friends who's been playing this deck since Liverpool and before Liverpool, and has basically always just been playing this Mustard package with Beedrill, has really leaned into it, and I've tested a lot against him. I really get his approach with this archetype, and we kind of agree that Sylveon is probably stronger right now as a 1-1 line. Sylveon VMAX we saw do very well as its own sort of mini archetype alongside Arceus, made top 8. So we're trying the same strategy here where this becomes a great Urshifu answer, but also gives you the option to end your turn on Dream Gift if you want to, which is no bad thing. So a little bit of extra consistency when needed. When you are the player going first, for example, this can help you get into Starbirth, or can help you get like an Ultra Ball to help you muster the following turn. So it can do a lot just by sitting in play, which is not bad at all. And typically, like I said, you'd see that Urshifu come in here, but it's far weaker when there's a lot of Dunsparce and a lot of Manaphy anyway. So instead, we're just going for this Beat Stick and having a Zapdos as a much softer answer to Arc Mirror, but in general is still okay. Because Beedrill is still good in the Arc Mirror, at least for the first Arceus, you can still get a KO on them with a 1-prizer, and that's already a really good uptrade. So your Mirror isn't completely won or lost on the fact that they can Sharon's care you and you can't, because sometimes you can be the one going first and KOing their V, and then like their second V-Star comes into play and you can Beedrill it, and then you're just looking for any prizes anywhere from any of your Pokemon. So yeah, I feel like the Mustard is still reasonable. Beedrill is very good into Mew still, which I'm expecting to be very popular. The Sylveon is certainly a soft answer to Urshifu, but it can really put them in weird positions, especially when you have a very good 1-prize attacking threat that again has that really annoying hit point number to get through. Like, it's not just going to be Hooper that gets through this, even like a Baby Molt, it takes a while for that to be worthwhile and whatever. So yeah, I think Beedrill is a pretty good answer to like the sort of Sobble do nothing game plan, especially when you have a Sylveon in the back that's threatening to go, especially because it's right-hand double turboable. You don't even need to power up with Nova, which I think is really cool. So this is definitely a tweak on the Arc Beedrill, but really it's just the little pieces that have changed. It's still playing a lot of the things that it previously did. I'm choosing to play Avery's over the Marnies in the deck list, and potentially even like Pokegears are sometimes in the list. Pokegears do help you get that turn 1 Beedrill that little bit more. But Avery is added disruption, which I think is very reasonable, especially into like Arc Intel. I think it's important because, like I said, you don't want them just having their like Sharon's care nonsense the whole game. You want to try and limit their board state. Sometimes Avery as well might just make them discard a Dunsparce when they haven't seen the Zapdos in game 1, that sort of thing. So it can just put your opponent in weird spots, I think. You could easily go down to like 1 Avery, 1 Marnie, or you could cut Avery altogether and just play like 1 Marnie, 1 Pokegear. Gear, obviously a good card because you can Mysterious Tail for it, so it's not just, you know, like a random one-of, it's a card that's helpful. Speaking of random one-of, I am playing one copy of Scoop Up Net in here, over an Air Balloon that was previously in the list. That's to somewhat play around Yoga Loop plays, because your opponent probably isn't expecting you to just play one random net. So it can undo some early quick shooting pings or whatever, which I think is important, but also it can help reset your bench type-wise for your Sylveon VMAX to make sure you do enough with Max Harmony, because things like Guru and Arceus share the same typing, Zigzag and Crobat, so and even Lumineon Manaphy, right? So you can sort of pick up and put down things how you want, so you can actually get a KO with Sylveon, which is kind of funky. This is still like more theory than played out. But I've played around a lot with the Beedrill Arc concept, with this 1/1 package being an Urshifu previously, and I think it's certainly reasonable to go alongside this list. But yeah, a couple tweaks that could go along here, but the key elements are that Mustard Beedrill is very good alongside Arceus, the Sylveon is very good at helping deal with your bad matchup, which is Urshifu, right? Because this list isn't playing Dunsparce, this is just playing a proactive answer, I guess you could say. And it's trying to piece together a good Arc Mirror by having Beedrill to KO their first one. They almost always need to double turbo to attack with their first one. Zapdos to come in and sort of have a surprise factor element of KOing, and still trying to fight them on the sort of Arceus fronts, just, you know, two prizes hitting into each other, having the option to Zigzagoon boss belt. If they are doing a Sharon's Care, put back down the Arceus player, you can at least force that. And the Averys come in to disrupt their engine that little bit. So yeah, it's doing a lot, and a lot of the decks I'm showing right now are pretty out there and wacky and very one-off based, but it feels like you're putting in a lot of answers to the format right now, rather than going like, here's my consistent engine, this is what I do every game. There are just like too many good decks in the format that you need to check and answer, that you can just have like your strategy doing your thing. I don't think many decks can perform that. And the final thing I want to show is just an Arc Bibarel. I know a lot of people are looking towards Bibarel over Inteleon just because they're expecting other people to be Averying you, and it means that you don't get the full value of Shady Dealings, which is very fair. The idea being that you can keep one Bibarel on board, and it's a lot of value in one space instead. And it also gives you space to play around with your Pokemon. Again, we're trying a dark package in here. Just a 2-prize package again, similar to how it is with the Inteleon build, but this one doesn't have the late-game Moltres swing, so it is a little bit more focused on your Arceus in general, so maybe a small thing to worry about there. But as we go down, not too much to say. We have the Judge Marnie path plays in this list to be trying to hit Mew in that sense. I'm combining it with double Big Charm back to like the old-fashioned way to keep your Arceus out of range. I think it's very handy and forces a lot of power tablets down, which I think is good. But of course, Big Charm is also helpful for putting onto a Dunsparce or putting onto a Manaphy to play around quick shooting Yoga Loop. So that's why you play the second copy of the Big Charm. And yeah, incorporating the Piers, I'm just like, as soon as I've seen Piers do well with Gustavo, I've been like, yes, I'm all in on this Piers, because I found so many spots where you Starburst 4 Piers just so it can be like the thing that you attach to as well as the double turbo all in one Starburst card that lets you like push that little bit further. It's like you're Starbursting for 3 tutored cards rather than just 2, which I think is really dope. So yeah, I do like the Piers a lot, even though there's no bat in this list whatsoever. You could also think about a Crobat package. It's something that I've tried in here as well. Just anecdotally, I am playing double Sharon's Care in here as well. It's one of those things where the main reason I don't like the Bibarel engine is that you lose to Arc Mirror when they play the Inteleon engine, because they just time their Sharons better than you. But I'm just hoping that the double Sharons means that you can like cycle towards it early enough, or at least once in an Arc Mirror to try and make it awkward for the opponent. But again, we're playing the Belt Zigzag and high boss count, so maybe we can capitalize on a Sharon in an alternate approach, basically. But yeah, this does lack a little bit of late game pressure, but is hoping to not get so disruptive by other engines, and has its own little element of disruption and darkness in here as well to beat Mew. So probably a little bit soft in Arc Mirror match situations, but at least has the right Pokemon and disruption to beat Mew and to beat Urshifu, because I do think Urshifu is one of these decks that you have to respect. It could be way more popular than I imagine, but based on online tournaments, if it has been popular, people are just doing badly with it because they don't know how to play the deck properly. I feel like, you know, not to sound like an elitist, like douchey kind of guy, but I think Urshifu Moltres is one of the hardest decks to play in the game. I actually think Mew is also one of the hardest decks to play in the game, but I think it's more intuitive to play Mew, whereas Urshifu is much more abstract and much more sort of choosy. You can do a lot of piecing together and have a lot of long-term game plans with this deck, which is just harder to play, and I think a lot of people will be put off by that. Like I said, Gustavo's list gives people training wheels and makes it much more easy to pilot, so I think it could easily get up to like 8% of the field, I think, for some of these tournaments, because of just how well it did, and people do at least have a couple weeks. If they are someone who tests the game a lot, they can get over the line. But yeah, I'm actually low-key touting Rapid Mali to do well this weekend. I think Mew will do very well as well. This could be the time when Mew actually just wins another tournament again, because it feels like it's still keeping very true to its initial 60, but just one or two card changes makes it very good into the field. Whereas a lot of these other decks, like I've seen, like Arceus has had to make massive strides to change up where its meta position is. Urshifu has to put in so many gross cards, like it's really annoying to cut down to one big shady Inteleon and have to play quick shooting, and then you have to cut your Medicham. There's like so many spaces that you lose out of consistency, which will hurt your percentages everywhere, right, around every matchup. So yeah, I think it might be Mew's tournament to win, because A, it has the field of numbers going for it, and B, like the deck list still looks very good and still very streamlined, but has just that little bit more to help in some of these more popular matchups. Let me know what you guys think is going to do well for this tournament. What did you think about some of the Arceus lists? They are some of the most out there that I had today, so stay with me, trust me. I'm out here trying to keep Arceus relevant. It's so weird to think that it's such a crazy card from Brilliant Stars and it's done so well in the format, but we're basically having to go back to the drawing board with Arceus. It really is wild. Let me know your thoughts down below, but I will be back tomorrow for another video, so cheers.